Hello and welcome to a $400 gaming PC build. This is going to be one of the best gaming PCs you can build for $400 US, so let's get started. Now to kick things off, I went with the i3-6100. It's an entry-level gaming processor, nothing fancy, but it does have 2 cores and 4 threads, which means it will run all of the games that requires at least 4 threads to run. If you went with the Pentium G4400, there are some games that you might not even be able to run because it will require you to have at least 4 threads, and you actually can't even open the game. It'll just say error. Now for the motherboard, I went with the Gigabyte H110M Revision A. The reason I went for the Gigabyte is it had 2 PCI Express 1X slots as opposed to most other ones that only had 1. If you don't care about that, it doesn't really matter. For most people, then go with the cheapest H110M motherboard you can find. Make sure you get the H110M, not the H110i. That's mini ITX and usually costs extra. So really cheapest H110M motherboard. Now for the RAM, I went with 1 stick of 8 gigabytes of DDR4 as opposed to say something like 2 sticks of 4 gigabytes because you want to leave some space for potential upgrades in the future. Your motherboard will only support 2 sticks of RAM, so make sure you leave some room for potential future upgrade. Now for the storage device, I went with a 128 gig SSD, although I understand if you don't have a hard drive lying around like I do, you might want to get a 1 terabyte hard drive, which will cost around the same, and make sure you get a 7200 RPM one, and you're good to go. Now for the graphics card, I went with the GTX 680. I managed to get this one used for about $100 US. At $100 US, this card will kick any other one's ass in terms of price to performance. If you buy a new card, at $100 US, you can only get something like an RX 460, which is way worse than the GTX 680. And honestly, I would not recommend buying a new card at this price point, which is about $100 or so, because there's really nothing that's effective in terms of price and performance. The closest thing that I would get if you had to buy new would be something like the RX 470. Obviously, that costs a lot more, but it will give you a lot better performance as well. So for me, I went with the used GTX 680. Now for the case I went with the Cooler Master N200. Again, a case, it doesn't really matter what case you get, you're going to get the same performance. You just want to pick a case that fits your build, that fits your, desk that you're going to put it under or on top of, and the one that looks okay if you care about that at all. Really, for me, I put my case underneath my desk, so I don't care about looks. I just went with the cheapest one that I could find, and for you, you might feel the same way. So for the power supply, I went with the cheapest I could find that I felt that wasn't really going to explode on you. You don't want that to happen. Your house might burn down. That's not good. I went with the 400 watt EVGA, basic standard, not 80 plus power supply. It's non-modular either, which means you're gonna have a lot of cables lying around, whatever. It's cheap, it'll get the job done. It won't explode. That's pretty much all you can really ask for at this price point. Now a lot of you might be wondering, but wait, why did you use a used GPU? Well, I mentioned it kind of before that, I wanted something that matches with the i3-6100 in terms of price performance. Ideally, what I'm going for in the games is that, you want to get 100% GPU performance usage as well as 100% CPU performance usage so that you're not really wasting anything and you're getting close to as ideal and balanced build as possible. And the benefit of getting a used GPU while maintaining new components for everything else is that you can build your PC before you get your GPU, build everything, make sure it works. You can use onboard integrated graphics to make sure it boots, to make sure everything is working condition. Meanwhile, you're shopping for a GPU on your Craigslist or whatnot. Now, I know I said I use a GTX 680, but really you can use any card that gives about the same performance as a GTX 680, such as the GTX 770, the GTX 960, or if you're an AMD fan, you can get something like, the 7970, the R9 280, or the R9 280X. All these cards will have about the same performance, and they'll all cost around $100 US, if not less. So now that we're finished talking about the system, let's move on to the benchmarks. First up is The Witcher 3. Now, The Witcher 3 is probably one of the most demanding titles out right now, yet it ran surprisingly well. I had to turn settings down to medium and post-processing down to low, but at these settings it ran at a stable 60 FPS, dipping only down to 50 at certain times. At these settings, I played this game for about an hour. Let me tell you right now, the graphics still look amazing. It's The Witcher 3. Even at medium, everything is gorgeous, and to top it off, I had no performance problems at all. Everything was fine. Even through that entire hour of gameplay, I did not notice any difference in terms of performance compared to my main rig, which is using a GTX 1060. Now on to BioShock Infinite. BioShock Infinite is a bit of an older game, admittedly, but it still looks amazing and is fairly graphically demanding. Therefore, I felt this was a pretty good intermediate game to use as a benchmark. I used the game's in-game benchmarks because it had one and it ran at about 100 FPS according to that. However, I actually played the game as well on this rig, and in-game, I managed to get about 120 to 144 FPS. And yes, I'm using a 144Hz monitor and it looks perfect. Everything is silky smooth and I had no problem running this game at absolute max settings, which all of this benchmark was done at. Yes, that's right, everything was maxed. Everything looks great, no problem running BioShock Infinite, 10 out of 10 performance. Next up is Grand Theft Auto 5, a bit more demanding than BioShock Infinite, especially on the CPU. This time I wasn't able to max everything, but I was able to turn all the graphical settings on high with the advanced settings turned off. Renders distances were pretty high too. I managed to max out a couple of the sliders, but those things weren't too important. What's important for this game is the CPU usage. That's right, Grand Theft Auto 5 is very high on the CPU, and I wanted to make sure my i3-6100 was going to be able to cut it for even the most CPU intensive games. And let me tell you right now, it cut it 99% of the time. 1% of the time, as you notice near the end of the benchmarks, it did throttle the GPU a tiny bit. It dipped down below 50 to 45 or so, but those moments were few and far in between. Most of the time this game ran silky smooth on 60 FPS, even going above that a lot of the times. And I would say at these settings it's completely playable. And finally, we have Metro Last Light Redux. Once again, I used the game's benchmarks, this time at very high preset with all advanced options such as tessellation turned off. I used the textures at 16x and that was about it. As you can see, this game is very smooth even at these high settings. And even though it's an older game, the Redux version did a rework using the new engine, improving lighting and certain textures. Now I haven't personally played this game for very long as I just got it off the Steam sale a couple days ago. But from what I can tell from the reviews, this is a very good game and I'm really looking forward to it. Alright, that about sums it up for this video. If you liked it, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. If you didn't, that's fine, be sure to leave a comment telling me what I can improve on because I really welcome constructive criticism. And if you have any questions about this video, be sure to leave a comment and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you for watching and have a great day.